It, it's that quite often um, someone from outside of the circumstances um, can actually find out from your other from the grandma or from the chief himself that he was prepared to admit that he's the one that brought his whole thriving community down because of his wants and and I think the fact that maybe he's admitted that it is his was his responsibility, that hopefully he will be able to slowly start to rebuild things. I'm not sure where things are going to go from here, but and the fact that the grandma could actually still be generous and kind and help out a stranger shows that there was still some humanity left in that village even after everything got pulled down. To me, that shows that when you look at situations like that and you can come across and find somebody that has got some positivity still left with them, that after all the hardships that they've been through, it shows that that person has a really, really lovely soul. And you can imagine that she's possibly and probably the one that is still feeding the chief and not letting what happened drag her down. So to me, I can look at that and I can think, well, there is hope there because he can admit that he was duped and that he was wrong and can go forward from where he is.
I bet you didn't catch one little tidbit on that. In the story, it says that the outside of the lodge is perfectly clean, right?
Yeah.
The Grand Lodge. And the inside is dirty, right? So what the chief was most worried about was how he looked, right? Not about keeping things orderly for himself. He wanted to portray a certain image.
Mm-hmm.
And well,
Yeah.
And I sort of took a thing from that,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I didn't sort of give that the outside inside thing much much thought. I was sort of more along the lines of, as I said, with the grandma trying to help things out and keep things going, and the fact that although he was, the chief was quite rude and not really wanting to see anyone, just because of his attitudes, I could still see from that hope can be, things can be resurrected even from that state if he's given the correct advice and put on the correct path. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. It's really really neat to think that a story like that can bring out so many different aspects from different people on the perspectives of what they can and can't see, written within that story and between the lines, and that helps everyone to grow and to relook at aspects of their own life to see if they can improve somewhere. Maybe it's good like that.
I realize
But then I also know a lot of other stories along the same lines, having been with Chief over the last few years when these have been written. So, I have several different aspects on each one of his stories.
I realized my mic was kind of turned down, so nobody heard what I was talking about, but they can hear you guys. If I re-say what I was saying in that pause, again, they could hear you guys and probably didn't hear me. It sounds like they're talking to a ghost. What I was saying is about perspectives, and it does like different perspectives of the witch, being the one that could be considered also grandma, and she's showing unconditional love, and not necessarily the maid being tormented him, but also the inside, like you just said. Basically, you guys kind of reaffirmed it, so I'm just trying to rehash because my mic was kind of muted.
But
I
he
feel-
could also look at the grandmother as a witch because maybe he doesn't want to be there anymore, and she's just prolonging by helping him.
Right. Like I said, what I was saying is going into false hope. Hope
Yeah.
was what was left in Pandora's box, and people put hope in the box of Pandora because why would you put hope in a box that's something joyful, in a box of evils? Because hope at one time was considered torture in a way. Because if you're giving hope to somebody who doesn't want to be alive, who doesn't want to be tormented, then of course they're going to look at hope in their perspective as being evil. So they would put it in a box. They would want to lock it away as something evil. So it's all about what perspective. Like what perspective are we learning from, looking at, and I have seen a lot of your stories have multiple perspectives within them. So it's interesting to kind of go through them in a way, and even like I said, even Pandora's box, it's a whole perspective story. We get all these stories that come through that people from different places can take a different way. Depends on where they're at vibrationally.
It also depends on um what perspective in is your life. Like how are you looking at your own life on how you would take like even a happy story, or if you're happy how you'd take a sad story, or like
Yeah.
it's all perspective based, and that's why you could read a story one day and then read it an hour later and you're not feeling the same way you were feeling.
Yeah.
And you could get a whole different thing.
I mean, and that's kind of, I want to bring it back to like the spiritual community, and again, going back in through some of the old podcasts. So, but I don't know how many times being awakened and aware, and then going back to watch an older movie that you watched when you weren't so awake and aware, and you get a totally different perspective on it. Like you said, it's a whole different perspective on that story, on a movie, on a show, any of that. And it tells you more about yourself, but also
Yeah.
tells you more about the reality space we're in, because once you start seeing all perspectives in a way. If you start to be able to see all perspectives, which is again what we're here with this community for, the more perspectives we can see from, the more that we see that we are more in unity than we are divided.
Yeah, because the more you could see from somebody else's perspective, the more open, literally, probably your eyes are going to be in a way.
Yes.
Because you'll be able to understand where they're coming from. Because there's really no wrong perspective. There's just a different perspective from somebody that thinks that somebody has a wrong perspective.
Yes. Like the whole, I think I've used the line where, to the mouse, a cat is absolutely evil for hunting a mouse and tormenting it. But to the cat, it's just doing its job. It's not evil. It's doing what it was created for.
Yeah.
I enjoy this story.
Yeah. I can sort of see, like both of you, there's so many different perspectives that can come out of just those few short stories that, like you said, Chief, depending on your mood, your attitude, whatever, you get different things out of it. You could side with the maiden that wanted everything and wanted to deliberately pull down what had been built with love and care, because she didn't like that aspect of it. And you might think, well, what were her reasons behind that? And it, and the chief, by allowing himself to be duped like he was, why was he, where was his mind set at that stage to allow him to be able to be duped so easily when for so many years he had succeeded in building up what he had built up? So, you can take all sorts of different characters out of that, those stories, and apply it to the world, and it's really quite amazing what you will see when you open your eyes to different things, like you said.
Then even another way to look at it would be, how do we know? Because nobody talks about this, but obviously, villages raided other villages, right?
Mm-hmm.
Long time ago.
Yes.
Even in native culture, but there's hardly any stories about it. How do we know that the chief or the village in the story didn't go and raid the maiden's village, and she's just one of the few that survived or had to rebuild their village after whatever happened, and how that didn't tie into her wanting to destroy their village in a way, but to a more severe extent.
Yeah, and not through actual physically killing of anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I didn't sort of stop to realize that. Yeah.
But you could also see where you could take it from a different way, is that the maiden could have came in with truth in a way, is she was here to show the people what chief was really just enamored with, vanity in a way, status. And it's basically all those bad qualities, or say bad qualities, but all those qualities, like I said, trauma, attachments in a way, that she was exposing to them. So maybe she wasn't as manipulative. I mean, according to the chief, yes, she was manipulative, but what if she was actually just showing him the truth of who he is?
Sort of like holding up a mirror.
Yeah. Shining a light on it and going, here, this is what you were attached to, your attachment. This is how it's tormenting you. This is what's inside of you. And if you want to heal, you would, again, if you were a chief that had your community and your community was following you no matter what, they wouldn't have left. They would have known the truth of you. But if she was showing them a truth of who the chief actually is, so of course those people are going to actually leave, because they can see the way that was being portrayed, the particular, whatever, vanity, whatever it was, ego in a way.
Yeah, and it's sad that at that stage that there was no one within the village that felt that they could go up to him and say, look at what you were doing.
Yeah.
because people were too scared to say anything. And, apart from one person that stayed there and, the grandma that was still could welcome anyone in and feed them.
But then another way to look at it, maybe the story is a fabrication inside the mind of the chief. Maybe he wants somebody to still be there, which would be the grandma. And maybe he wants somebody to find his village in such disrepair so they can come and ask him so that he could be important again and have to tell the story of how things came to be that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. That's another aspect of it that I didn't look at. And yet I've heard that story several times, and that aspect never really dawned on me.
Looking at it from all angles. And then again, it goes back to us talking perspective. Each one of us here in the community wise, we're here with a different perspective, a different lifestyle, but yet we can come together and look at it from all of them without actually judging any of it, to actually just see what is the actual truth in it. You know what I mean? What's the story in it, and how is it that what are we learning when we take away from it? Because everything in life is basically learning. It's a school of life in a way. So what are we learning? What's the story that we could take out of this? What's the lesson that we take out of this? I find it very interesting.
And each one of us will take a different lesson. Yeah.
What's the lesson?
I say don't become the chief, then you won't have to deal with that sort of thing.
So that's also saying that I'm not prepared to accept any responsibilities.
Well, I mean, okay, it says don't become the chief, but how many people follow somebody and they don't want to be followed? Again, a true leader is the one person that's like, no, I don't want to. You know what I mean? In a way, they're like, no. But in the same sense, I get what you're saying. It's like the responsibility of it. If somebody isn't completely healed and being that, again, perspective of even their people, the compassion to look at it. I mean, how was it? I would almost like to see is how was the chief treating his people, even though they were happy in a way, but how was it that they were rectifying situations? Was he seeing it not from both points of view? Was he not being empathetic enough? And like you were saying, Grandma, like Kiwi, the grandma there, but having people be too afraid to come up and confront him. What does that say about the way that he treats his people or how they see him?
Yeah, were they actually living in fear of him to start with? For him to be able to get into the state that he got into and allow things to happen. You can, if you have a good chief who shares and cares his responsibilities, the village probably would not have got into that state where it was, because he would have had the eyes open to see it, or had the support around him to say, hey, listen, you've been taken for a bit of a fool here and taken on a ride. Be very careful, and just really look at your situation. And but for that to have happened, he would have had to have had some really good, loving support around him. So yes, what was his whole persona pre the maiden coming in? Although he had a lovely village, was it a village that was actually built on fear or built on love?
Yeah, it's a good perspective to take into account.
Yeah.
I would say read the last one, but I'm gonna say let's hold off on it and kind of keep a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Well, let's have somebody. If they want to come, if you guys want to hear it in the next podcast or the next story time, you can find us, and relatively speaking, you can find us and I'll give you the links to some of Chief stuff. And again, links to any books, anything that you want to help with promote on it. If you want to hear it, you can come through that way, or also again come through the podcast again if you want to pay attention. Maybe we'll do the next one, see how it goes. To be continued, cliffhanger. Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
Da, 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 da.
All right. So
So,
I'm gonna
Not la di da di da. It's da da da.
right.
oh, I'll give you la di da di da.
Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah. No, it is a cliffhanger. It
Mhm.
is, and
It's
it's
always
well
a
worth.
pleasure to share a story with people.
And it's always
Yeah, and
great
it's
to
well
hear.
worth coming back to hear the rest of it because believe me, it is well worth it.
Yes, it
Yep.
is. All right, so
Yeah.
I will end this podcast here, and like I said, I will provide all the information for you, Chief Yankee, and to help promote again, get us all out there. We're all on the same page. We're here with the community, and a lot of the great works you have, the stories. Chief works in the library, haha. See him in there. So he's got some really good stories going on. And Kiwi, thanks for coming in as well. And I will end the
Oh, it's my
podcast here.
pleasure.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you
Yeah.
both.
Have a lovely
Thank
day,
you.
everyone.